Fine, I agree. Let's get a divorce. When Ethan Ward brought up divorce for the 10th time, Alara Vance agreed. The man on the other end of the line was clearly stunned. He had expected to have to coax and plead with Alara again, already prepared for a huge fight. Every other time he'd mentioned divorce, Alara would scream and cry and threaten to kill herself. What did you say? You agree? Yes, I agree. There was no point in dragging it out any longer. Since Ethan wanted to marry her, then let him. Let the star-crossed lovers have their way. Ethan was obviously ecstatic. She could feel his sheer joy even through the phone. This is great, Quinn. We can get married. On the other end of the line, a man and a woman were crying tears of joy. Congratulations, Alara said, her voice heavy with exhaustion. The Ethan who had once sworn before God to love and cherish her forever didn't notice a thing. Okay, I'll come over tonight to see you. All right. The beginning of all their problems was when they learned that Quinn Hughes had a terminal illness and didn't have long to live. From that day on, Ethan put Quinn first in everything, abandoning Alara for her time and time again. Although Alara was uncomfortable with her husband's actions, she didn't stand in his way. She believed she shouldn't be too hard on someone who was dying, so she tacitly accepted all of his boundary-crossing behavior. She never imagined that her retreat and tolerance wouldn't improve her situation, but instead would encourage Quinn to push her luck. Quinn actually had the audacity to ask Ethan to marry her, saying it was her childhood dream and hoping Ethan would make it come true. When Alara first heard about it, she thought it was absurd. How could Quinn ask a married man to marry her? Did she expect Ethan to divorce her and then marry Quinn? But to her shock, Ethan had agreed. That night, Ethan came home with the divorce papers ready. Alara said nothing. She took the agreement and read it carefully. It was clearly stated. The husband, Ethan Ward, was willing to give up all his assets and leave with nothing. Truly a moving, epic love story. Alara laughed, forcing back tears. Without hesitation, she swiftly signed her name. Seeing her so eager, Ethan was suddenly displeased. You have nothing else you want to say? I do. Congratulations on getting your wish and winning the fair lady. Alara stood up and turned to grab her purse. Ethan frowned, his face dark as he reprimanded her. You know I love you, I just feel sorry for her. We're only getting a temporary divorce. When she's gone, we'll get back together. And what if she never dies? Alara looked at him with a faint smile, her tone light, but the words she spoke were sharp and heartless. Ethan's face changed instantly. He shot up from his seat, grabbing her shoulders. When did you become so malicious? Looking at his face, twisted and ferocious in anger, Alara found it laughable. She didn't want to get entangled any further. She threw his hands off and walked out the door. Staying under the same roof with Ethan for another second might shorten her own life. After all, a bad mood can kill you. As she closed the door, she could hear the sound of something shattering inside. On the day of the divorce, Alara arrived early. She had even put on a full face of makeup, planning to greet her new life looking her most dazzling. Not long after, Ethan arrived with Quinn Hughes in tow. Ethan's face was tense and weary, with stubble he hadn't had time to shave. He looked like he hadn't rested well for days. Well, taking care of a sick person is always exhausting. But Quinn, a few steps behind him, walked with a light step and a smile on her face. A happy occasion lifts the spirits. That saying was perfectly embodied by Quinn. Other than being a little pale, you couldn't tell she was terminally ill and on death's door. Let's go, Alara said. She had no time or inclination for pleasantries. It would be too fake. Alara, I brought you some caramels. Have one first, Ethan said, suddenly grabbing her arm. Alara paused but didn't linger. Don't worry, I had breakfast today. She turned and walked into City Hall. After successfully getting her divorce certificate, Alara let out a heavy sigh of relief. When she walked out the main entrance, the sunlight seemed especially bright and glorious. Meanwhile, Ethan and Quinn conveniently went to get their marriage license. Not even a seasoned wedding crasher could time things that well. 28 years old, divorced, no kids, financially free, the three greatest joys in life. A promotion, a windfall, and a dead husband. Even though her ex-husband wasn't dead, it was close enough. Thinking of this, Alara couldn't help but laugh out loud. The long-held darkness deep in her heart was finally chased away by the light. But life is unpredictable, and fortune and misfortune are two sides of the same coin. Great joy is often followed by great sorrow. Unfortunately, not long after leaving City Hall, Elara was hit by an out-of-control car and thrown several meters. The brand-new divorce certificate, still warm in her hand, flew from her grasp and landed on the road. As she lay in a pool of blood, her consciousness fading, all she felt was grief. Her newfound wealth, her beautiful, free life as a rich woman, all gone in a puff of smoke. With a heart full of longing and bitterness for the long string of numbers in her bank account, she closed her eyes in despair. "Look at the board, not at me. Is there something written on my face?" A furious roar echoed in her ears, followed by the sharp slap of a clipboard against a blackboard. Elara's eyes flew open. She saw students in school uniforms sitting around her, a balding, middle-aged man spewing spittle at the front of the classroom, a fan spinning ceaselessly overhead, and the winding school corridors under the summer sun outside the window. Was this heaven? Or was her life flashing before her eyes? Did I make it to heaven? She couldn't help but wonder, asking the question out loud. To her surprise, she heard Ethan's voice. "Heaven? If you screw up your finals again, you'll be closer to death than heaven." She turned her head and saw a version of Ethan who was 10 years younger. This with Ethan here, it definitely wasn't heaven, more like a nightmare. Elara looked at Ethan in shock, then pinched her own cheek, and then slapped herself hard, trying to wake up. "Wake up," Chloe Shaw, sitting behind her, was completely bewildered by this series of neurotic actions. Her clever little brain immediately thought of something terrible, and her eyes welled up with tears. "Wah," she wailed. "Mr. Thompson, stop yelling at her. You've yelled Elara into a stupor." Ultimately, the three of them were summoned to the dean's office. The dean, looking deeply disappointed, tapped his desk repeatedly. "This is a serious offense. Disrupting class, openly insulting a teacher." Chloe, usually cheerful and carefree, turned into a timid quail whenever trouble arose. Sir, we were just," she stammered, unable to get a coherent sentence out. This only made the dean angrier. "I never thought something so egregious would happen in our school. This must go on your record." "Sir, Chloe was on the verge of tears. Ethan, on the other hand, looked completely unfazed. He shrugged. "Sir, I have no idea what got into Elara. She just suddenly slapped herself." As he spoke, Ethan glanced at Elara with a worried and conflicted expression, finally coming up with a random excuse. "Maybe it's because her grades have been slipping badly lately. She's probably in a bad mood." A bad mood is no excuse for disrupting class discipline. Elara was in a daze, completely out of it. Her once lively eyes stared blankly out the window, her face a mask of faint confusion. She was like someone shrouded in mist, unable to pull herself out of this surreal, nightmarish state. Suddenly, she saw the faint, almost transparent figure of her grandmother appear outside the window. "Grandma," she murmured to herself, thinking, "This really must be heaven if Grandma has come to see me." Her grandma was the person who had loved her most in the world, but she had passed away just before Elara's college graduation. At the time, Elara was busy with graduation preparations and job hunting. By the time she got the news and rushed back, the old woman had already closed her eyes for the last time. She never got to say a final goodbye. For years, she had dreamt of the loquat tree in the courtyard back in the countryside, where her grandma loved to sit in the shade, fanning herself. She walked towards her grandma, step by step, desperate to be by her side. She heard someone calling her name, but she paid it no mind. "Grandma," she climbed out the window. Grandma was right there. "Don't stop her, It wasn't until she hit the ground and felt the pain that Elara finally realized something, yet she couldn't believe it. She instinctively looked back at where her grandma had been, but the spot was empty. Before she lost consciousness, she saw many people running towards her. When she opened her eyes again, she was met with a stark white ceiling and the strong smell of disinfectant. "You're awake?" The person who had been sitting by her side gripped her hand tightly. She followed the voice and saw Ethan. The young man's eyes were filled with the joy of having her back and a cautious, fawning tenderness that betrayed his fear of losing her. He bowed his head slightly, his thick black hair swaying in the gentle breeze, every strand seeming to carry a hint of anxiety and hope. The look in his eyes was so full of pity and raw sincerity. "Thank God you're okay. I really don't know what I would have done otherwise." He clutched Elara's hand tightly, as if afraid she would disappear if he loosened his grip for even a second. His hands were trembling uncontrollably. He was so worried that something terrible would happen to her. And yet, this was the same person who, 10 years later, would do anything to escape from her. She remembered when Ethan first brought up divorce. He had been so guilty then, speaking to her gently. Later, his patience wore thin, and his words became uglier, sharper. Finally, he resorted to threats and bribes, even willing to give up all his assets just to divorce her. During their worst fight, Ethan had blurted out, "Your heart is so cruel. You can't even show a shred of compassion for someone who's dying. No wonder no one loves you, not even your own parents." The moment the words left his mouth, even Ethan himself froze. I didn't mean that." Her childhood nightmare had become the knife Ethan used to stab her. She stumbled back several steps, a chasm of fear and pain suddenly opening up to swallow her. She gasped for air, trying to escape the suffocating, twisting agony. Realizing what he'd said, Ethan guiltily reached for her hand to comfort her, but she pulled away. Alara stared at the hand that had once pulled her out of the darkness. Now it had transformed into a blade named Ethan, relentlessly, mercilessly torturing her. In that moment, she suddenly realized that they were well and truly over. After Ethan left, the first thing she did was call her grandma. "Grandma, my girl, no class today. How come you have time to call grandma?" After so many years, she finally heard her grandma's voice again. Alara thought that even if this was just a dream, she would willingly sleep forever. "Grandma, I miss you." So much, so very much. Fortunately, Alara had jumped from the second floor that day. It wasn't high, so the consequences weren't too severe, just a fractured left leg, which was now in a cast. Over the next few days, many classmates came to visit, and even the school administration showed up. Her classmates were both worried and shocked that she had jumped, and they would look at her with incredulous eyes, but they didn't dare ask too many questions, afraid of upsetting her. The moment Chloe Shaw saw her, she couldn't stop crying. Having witnessed the jump, she'd had nightmares for days. Chloe hugged her and sobbed, "Thank God you didn't die, or I would have had nightmares for the rest of my life." "How could I let you have nightmares for the rest of your life?" The school administrators came several times, arranging a few rounds of counseling for her. Alara had been in the hospital for a few days when her parents, always busy with work, finally came to see her. They didn't stay long, instead hiring a caregiver for her. Right. Why would they waste their time taking care of her in a hospital? People often say that children born when their parents are most in love are the happiest. But she wasn't so lucky. She was born when her parents, Howard and Penelope Vance, were in the midst of building their careers. After she was weaned, she was handed over to a nanny. They were actually very much in love back then, a romance that had blossomed on campus and led to marriage. Though both were busy with work, they shared a good morning kiss before leaving the house every day. Like many couples in the honeymoon phase, they would stick together whenever they had free time, and they would meticulously prepare gifts for each other on holidays. She had pieced all this together from their countless arguments later on. The pots in the house used to be filled with all sorts of flowers and plants. Her mother loved gardening, and her father would help water and fertilize them. Until, gradually, the plants withered. The two of them started staying out all day and night, and every time they saw each other, they would argue endlessly. The year she was in 7th grade, her parents were on the brink of divorce. Back then, Alara was insecure and sensitive. She would often hide behind a rockery in the neighborhood, watching aunts move their homes, wasting away her time. She was immersed in her own world until Ethan appeared. Ethan was like a little sun, instantly illuminating her dark world. Ethan would count ants with her, take her to play ball, and introduce her to his friends. "It's okay, Alara, you have me. Alara, I'll never leave you, I'll always be with you." The young boy's promises were earnest and passionate. She would never forget that day. Her parents, who were always so proper in front of others, turned into completely irrational beasts that night, hurling vicious words at each other, using the sharpest, most cutting insults to attack one another. As the argument escalated, the household items became the first casualties. The furniture and decorations, usually placed so quietly, became tools for them to vent their rage. Alara curled up in her bedroom, covering her ears, trying to block out the piercing sounds. Their once clean and tidy home looked as if it had been hit by a sudden disaster, completely destroying the already fractured family. She fell asleep amidst the shouting. When she woke up, the house was quiet, the living room a mess. She thought her parents had gone to work, just like the many times before, argue, make up, over and over. But this time was different. In the evening, her parents came back, followed by a lawyer in a suit. They sat in the chaotic living room and began discussing the divorce. From the moment they walked in, neither of them spared Alara a single glance. They were busy with the divorce, busy fighting over assets, arguing incessantly over who would get the house and the cars. It wasn't until the lawyer reminded them, there's still the matter of child custody. It seemed that only then did they remember they had a child. They finally deigned to look at Alara. I give up custody of the child. I give up custody of the child. Two voices spoke at the same time. In that moment, they were in perfect sync. Even their cold, indifferent gazes were strikingly similar. For many years after, this scene would swallow her whole in her nightmares. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore and ran out. Ethan, who lived next door, heard the commotion and chased after her. It was winter, but she was too sudden, too frantic. She didn't even slow down as she ran across the busy road. Ethan quickly lost her. He searched from evening until late at night, his hurried figure and urgent calls echoing through the streets and alleys under the dim lights. It wasn't until dawn that Ethan finally found her in front of a remote convenience store. At that moment, Alara was crouching on the ground, her head buried in her knees, shutting out the entire world. "Alara Vance!" She looked up at the sound of his voice and saw Ethan running towards her, his bright eyes now bloodshot, his voice choked with emotion. "Don't you ever do this again, never again. Do you have any idea how worried I was when I saw you run into traffic? How could you be so foolish, running so far away by yourself?" He knelt in front of Alara, tears streaming down his face, his eyes pleading with her. "From now on, if you're unhappy, just come find me. Don't run so far away by yourself again, okay? We'll face it together. I'll always be by your side to protect you." The young boy's hot tears were more moving than the most beautiful love confession in the world. In that moment, time seemed to stand still. She could clearly hear her own heartbeat. She thought, I'll never forget this Ethan. The 12-year-old Ethan Ward had taken root in Alara Vance's heart from that day on. After that, her grandma came back from the countryside specifically to give her son and daughter-in-law a piece of her mind. Alara then went to live with her grandma in the countryside for a few years. But in the end, Howard and Penelope Vance never divorced because Penelope got pregnant. And so, she had a younger brother. It wasn't until high school, for convenience, and because her grandma's health was failing, that she returned to her parents' house and attended the same high school as Ethan. The two, separated for several years, were clearly a bit distant. Plus, by this time, a girl named Quinn Hughes had appeared by Ethan's side. Everything Ethan had done for her when she was 12, he did again for Quinn. But back then, Alara was so immersed in the joy of their reunion that she didn't notice the intimacy between Ethan and Quinn. She naively believed she was irreplaceable in Ethan's heart. After everything she went through in her past life, did Alara hate Ethan? She thought she didn't. Alara had never hated Ethan. There was resentment, sorrow, and bitterness, but never hate. She still hoped that Ethan would live the rest of his life in peace. But this time, she wouldn't be with him. She had once seen Ethan as her salvation, her lifeline. She had clung to him desperately, terrified he would abandon her. But now, she wanted to be her own salvation. She would walk forward on her own. The day she was discharged from the hospital, Ethan came to pick her up. As they passed a temple, Alara suggested they go in to pray. She hadn't believed in gods or spirits before, but after being reborn, she began to believe in the existence of supernatural beings. The gods were watching from above, seeing everything that happened in the mortal world. Seeing her difficulty walking, Ethan offered to carry her in. Alara refused. "It's just a short walk. I have to walk it myself, or it won't be sincere enough." She leaned on her crutches, carefully navigating the stone steps. Ethan, afraid she would fall, stayed 2 steps behind her, ready to catch her at any moment. The path that would take a normal person 5 minutes took her a full 20. Alara slowly entered the solemn temple, knelt on both knees, clasped her hands together, and bowed her head in devout prayer. She closed her eyes, her mind filled with the image of her grandma, silently praying. "I hope Grandma is healthy, that everything goes smoothly for her, and that she stays free from pain and illness." Ethan didn't believe in spirits, but seeing her so serious, he also knelt and prayed. The incense in the temple curled upwards, carrying people's most beautiful wishes and hopes. The smoke drifted towards the unknown sky. Before they left, they hung wishing ribbons on a wishing tree. In her past life, Elara had come to this temple with her grandma. She had hung 2 ribbons on which she wrote, "Wishing Grandma good health and all the best. I hope Ethan and I can be together forever, and I hope we can get married." This time, she came with Ethan earlier. She still hung 2 ribbons. "Wishing Grandma happiness and no more pain. May my wishes come true, and may Ethan and I both be safe." "Elara, what did you wish for?" "I wished for peace." "Didn't you wish for love?" She just smiled without answering. Ethan still followed closely behind her. He grinned and scratched the back of his head, his face slightly flushed with shyness. "I wished for love. I hope I can be with the person I love for the rest of my life." "You will," she said, and didn't he? 10 years later, he ended up with Quinn, didn't he? Ethan suddenly ran in front of her, his eyes shining. "Aren't you going to ask who I like? If you say your wish out loud, it won't come true." Elara knew exactly who Ethan wanted to talk about. At this age, Ethan always said he liked Elara. He had planned out many beautiful future scenarios, and Elara was always in them. But sincerity isn't eternal. Time is a terrifying thing. Elara desperately wanted to go back and see her grandma, but she couldn't right now. She was still on crutches, and she couldn't let her grandma see her like this. It would worry her. She planned to wait until she was fully recovered before going back, so her grandma could see her healthy and full of life. To keep up with her schoolwork, Elara didn't rest at home for too long. She was already a senior, and she had forgotten most of the material. But luckily, it was only the beginning of the first semester of her senior year. She still had a year to work hard. As she hobbled to the school gate on her crutches, she ran into Ethan and Quinn walking side by side. Quinn had transferred to their school in her senior year, but she and Ethan had known each other for a year already. The story was that Quinn was being cornered by some hooligans one day when Ethan happened upon them. Without a second thought, he jumped in to help, getting beaten black and blue himself. To thank him, Quinn often brought things to his house and even tutored him. Over time, they became close and were now good buddies. When Quinn first transferred, she didn't know anyone. Since she was so close to Ethan, she stuck to his side all day. And Ethan, to protect his girl buddy, warned everyone on her first day not to bully her. "Quinn is my good buddy, so you all better watch it. Anyone who bullies her is making an enemy of me." At the time, Elara had felt a little uncomfortable hearing that, but she quickly told herself that he was just helping a new classmate. Elara even took the initiative to befriend Quinn, introducing her to the other students in their class. Over time, the 3 of them became an inseparable trio. Since they lived close to each other, they always went to and from school together. Quinn wore thick glasses, had a mushroom-like haircut, and dark skin. She was plain and unremarkable in a crowd. But it was this unremarkable person who, in her past life, had completely stolen her husband's heart. She, Elara Vance, had to admit defeat. Ethan ran towards her. "Elara, why didn't you tell me you were coming to school today? I could have come to pick you up." Elara smiled at them. "I can't always trouble you." How could it be a trouble? The high school version of Ethan was as radiant as the morning sun. Just standing there, he made you feel warm. "Yeah, Ethan is so helpful. If you had told him, he definitely would have come to help you. He helps me all the time, right, Ethan?" Quinn's words, both in and out of context, highlighted how special Ethan was to her and how close their relationship was. "That's because you're so useless. You can't do anything right." "I'm useless? Who helped you with your English?" Ethan scoffed. "I helped you with your math. We're even." As they spoke, Quinn and Ethan started to bicker, complaining about how unreasonable the other was. Ethan and Quinn had their own unique chemistry that outsiders couldn't penetrate. It was only now that Elara realized how close their relationship had been so early on. So close that even though Elara was right there with them, she still felt excluded. She had truly been blind to the bigger picture. If she had noticed something was off between Ethan and Quinn earlier, she might not have ended up in the same predicament as her past life. "It's really fine, Shawnee came to get me." Just as she said that, Chloe Shaw came running over, her face flushed. As soon as Chloe arrived, she wrapped Elara in a big hug. "Ellie, you're finally back." Seeing that Chloe was about to cry again, Elara quickly stopped her. "Hold on, let's go inside first. It's hot out here." Okay, give me your backpack. You little cripple shouldn't be carrying it. Who are you calling a little cripple? Whoever's asking. Chloe Shaw. Haha. Alara exchanged a brief greeting with Ethan and Quinn, then left with Chloe, teasing each other. Ethan wanted to follow, but Quinn held him back. From a distance, Alara could still hear Quinn's voice. You ungrateful friend, you just said you were going to help me move my stuff, and now you're going to ditch me. Go on, go if you go, we're not friends anymore. All right, I'm scared of you, my little princess. Just like so many times in her past life, Ethan chose Quinn over her. The friendship between teenage girls is the most simple, sincere, and genuine. For many years to come, Chloe Shaw would be Alara's best friend. It wasn't until Chloe married and moved to London that they barely had a chance to see each other again. Alara felt that after she died in her past life, only Chloe would have genuinely grieved for her. That day, after school, Ethan and Quinn had packed their bags early and were waiting for Alara at the front of the classroom. Ethan was getting a little impatient. He urged, "Are you done yet? Hurry up." Alara looked up and saw the two of them standing together, an inexplicable wave of annoyance washing over her. Of course, she didn't want to walk home with them anymore. It would ruin her mood. Didn't I tell Quinn that I'm going to the library with Shawnee to study later, so I won't be walking back with you guys? Ethan looked at Quinn in surprise, a blank expression on his face. Clearly, Quinn hadn't passed on the message. Oh, I forgot, Alara, but are you really going to the library with Chloe Shaw? Quinn stood by, a meaningful smile on her face, and walked towards Alara step by step. I saw Chloe go home just now. At these words, Ethan whipped his head around to look at Alara, his eyes filled with confusion and dissatisfaction. Ethan hated it when people lied. He forcibly suppressed his anger. Alara Vance, you know I hate liars the most. Seeing Ethan's gloomy face, Alara suddenly smiled. Hates liars? In her past life, wasn't he completely fooled by Quinn's lies? Why would I lie? You're just angry because we didn't come to pick you up for school that day. But that's your fault. You didn't tell us in advance, and Quinn had something to do that day. I had to help her move some things, so I couldn't look after you for a moment. Ethan said it all so matter-of-factly, shaking his head at Alara in disappointment from time to time. Alara, you've been sulking over this little thing for days. Quinn and I have been understanding because you're injured and we've been putting up with you, but you can't push your luck. With these words, Alara, who had done nothing, was branded with a crime. How had she never noticed before what a vivid imagination Ethan had? Lately, Alara had indeed been distancing herself from Ethan and Quinn, avoiding them whenever possible. But that had everything to do with her past life and nothing to do with what happened a few days ago. But she didn't want to argue anymore, so she decided to explain properly. I am going to the library with Shawnee, but not the school library. It's the one near her house. She went home to get her ID because she forgot it. Seeing her sincere and open expression, Ethan finally believed her, but he still said awkwardly, "What time are you going home then? I can pick you up. It's not convenient for you to come back by yourself with your leg." Of course, Alara didn't want Ethan to pick her up. She just wanted to stay away from him. No need, Shawnee will take me home. Seeing this, Quinn quietly breathed a sigh of relief. She tried her best to hide her happiness, pretending to be generous. Ethan, since Alara has already said so, let's not interfere. Let's go back. Ethan was still worried. As he left, he reminded Alara, if anything happens, remember to tell me. Got it, Alara nodded perfunctorily. To avoid Ethan, Alara even started waking up an hour earlier to take the bus to school. When Ethan and Quinn asked, she just said she wanted to study hard and came to school early to review. After school, she continued to use the library as an excuse to part ways with them. For a week, Alara confined herself to the classroom and the library, studying day and night, forgetting to eat and sleep. It was a picture of intense dedication. She was at home memorizing English vocabulary when she received a message from Ethan. There's a camping trip this weekend. Do you want to go? Camping? Yes, camping. Alara remembered. There was this camping trip in her past life too. Back then, her heart was set on Ethan, so of course she wouldn't miss a chance to spend time with him. The difference was, in her past life, Ethan hadn't actively invited her. It was when she went to find Ethan that she overheard him and Quinn talking about the weekend camping trip, and she immediately said she wanted to go too. She didn't notice the ugly look on Quinn's face when she said that. Many years later, Alara learned that Quinn had actually planned to confess to Ethan during that camping trip. It was because of her interference that Quinn had to give up on her confession. At that time, Ethan had stuck by Alara's side for the entire camping trip, taking very good care of her. Alara clearly remembered that halfway through the trip, Quinn suddenly started crying. Quinn explained at the time that she had gotten smoke in her eyes, but anyone could see that Quinn was very upset. Alara didn't understand back then and asked Ethan about it afterward. Ethan just said that maybe it was because Quinn's parents were recently fighting about a divorce, so she was crying. But thinking back now, Ethan must have sensed Quinn's feelings for him back then. The person closest to the fire can certainly feel the heat. Since they were destined to be together in the future, she wouldn't get involved. Alara decisively replied, "I'm not going, my foot is injured and it's inconvenient." Ethan sent another message. "Alara, don't coop yourself up in the classroom all day. You need to come out and get some fresh air." "Alara, the air in the classroom is fresh too." After typing that sentence, Alara turned off her phone and ignored him, burying her head back in her vocabulary. But then, Ethan's call came through, as if he wouldn't give up until he got what he wanted. Reluctantly, Alara answered the phone. "What do you want?" Having been interrupted multiple times, Alara's voice was impatient, several decibels louder than usual. On the other end of the line, Ethan was clearly taken aback. He had never been treated with such impatience by Alara before. "Ethan, you're interrupting my studies." In the past, Ethan had said these words to her many times. Back then, when Quinn had just transferred, because of their good relationship, Quinn and Ethan often studied together. Quinn helped him with English, and Ethan helped her with math. Alara, on the other hand, worked hard on her own. It was supposed to be a group of 3, but somehow Alara was gradually excluded. At that time, to get their attention, Alara would often interject, trying to join their study sessions. But all she ever got in return was Ethan's line, "Alara Vance, you're interrupting our studies." Hearing Alara's words, even Ethan remembered those times, and a strange feeling rose in his heart. But he quickly shook off these strange feelings and reverted to his usual flippant demeanor. "Tisk, you said you weren't angry a few days ago. See? It's been so long and you're still angry." "You!" Alara was taken aback by his words, momentarily unable to follow his train of thought. Ethan chuckled confidently. All right, don't be angry. Quinn and I are waiting for you. You can't make any more excuses this time. People who don't know better will think Quinn and I are deliberately excluding you." Just as Alara was about to retort, she was interrupted by the sudden appearance of her father, Howard. "Camping? Go. What are you doing cooped up at home all day?" "I don't want to go." "You don't want to go? Fine. Your mother just said she was worried you'd get into trouble staying at home for too long, so she was planning to take you and your brother to the amusement park this weekend. You can go with them then." As much as she didn't want to go out with Ethan, Alara wanted to go out with her family even less. Every time she went out with them, she would end up fuming with anger because her mother, Mrs. Vance, loved to lecture, always comparing her to Ethan. She would go on about how sunny and cheerful Ethan was, and how introverted and not so smart Alara was, demeaning her from head to toe. Instantly, Alara replied to Ethan, "Okay, I've decided. I'll go." On the weekend, Ethan was waiting at Alara's door early in the morning, helping her into the elevator. Alara was no longer used to Ethan's touch. Goosebumps broke out all over her skin. This made her instinctively pull her hand back. To ease the awkwardness, she randomly found an excuse to divert attention. "Who's all going on this camping trip?" She actually remembered who was going, but excuses are just random like that. Ethan looked down at his suddenly empty right hand, a wave of irritation rising in him again, vaguely feeling that something was slipping out of his control. He answered casually, "Yeah, they're all going." And so, the two of them rode the elevator down in a strangely awkward atmosphere. When they reached the bus stop, they saw Quinn already waiting there. Just then, the bus arrived. The 3 of them got on together. Ethan and Quinn naturally sat together. Alara, with her inconvenient leg, was of course left behind. She chose a seat 2 or 3 rows away from them and lowered her head to look at the notes the teacher had just handed out. Ethan looked at Alara sitting far away from them, a vague, indescribable frustration rising in him. In his eyes, Alara had been acting strange all morning, inexplicably pushing him away. He couldn't figure it out, so he decided not to think about it. Ethan was quick to anger. He stopped paying attention to Alara and focused on chatting with Quinn. When they reached their destination, the bus stopped. Ethan and Quinn were deep in conversation, pushing and shoving each other playfully as they got off the bus, having almost completely forgotten about Alara's existence. It wasn't until the driver shouted loudly, "Stop fooling around, there's another passenger with a disability behind you, don't bump into her." Only then did they remember Alara. They looked back and saw Alara carefully getting off the bus behind them, leaning on her crutches. For a rare moment, Ethan felt a little guilty. He awkwardly took a few steps forward to support Alara. "Be careful." Quinn also put on a very guilty look. "I'm so sorry. We were just talking about a stray cat we saw on the road a few days ago. We got too excited and forgot about you." Her words were all meant to show how close she and Ethan were, to provoke Alara. If Alara hadn't gone through everything in her past life, she would have been hurt. After all, anyone would be sad for a long time if they were forgotten by the friends they went out with. But now, she only showed a look of as expected relief. It was no big deal that Ethan and Quinn had forgotten her. It would be best if the two of them were locked together so they wouldn't harm anyone else. Alara shook her head generously. "It's fine, it's not a big deal." Her magnanimous reply, completely disregarding their neglect, made Ethan feel even worse. He would have preferred it if Alara had questioned him about why he forgot her, rather than this completely indifferent attitude. It was as if Alara didn't care about him, Ethan Ward, anymore. Ethan suppressed the faint unease in his heart and bent down. "Get on. The campsite is still a few hundred meters away. I'll carry you." Alara really didn't want to agree, but her gaze inadvertently fell on Quinn's stiff and ugly face. A surge of vengeful pleasure rose in her heart. She was delighted to make Quinn unhappy. Without much hesitation, Alara threw her crutches to Quinn and climbed onto Ethan's back. Alara didn't notice that the tips of Ethan's ears had turned completely red as he carried her. Nor did she notice that his heart was beating like a drum. Alara's attention was completely captivated by Quinn. Watching Quinn grip her crutches so tightly that her fingertips turned white without even noticing, Alara felt an inexplicable sense of joy. The summer sun shone through the layers of leaves, falling on the three passing teenagers. The boy had a smile on his lips, his cheeks and ears bright red, while the girl on his back laughed happily. The short-haired girl following behind them, carrying the crutches, had red eyes, looking like she was about to cry. This scene was captured by a passing classmate, Laura Mills, with her camera, freezing the moment in time. When they reached the campsite, they found that everyone had arrived except for Chloe, who had a piano lesson that weekend. Except for Alara, who was sitting and resting due to her leg, everyone else started to get busy. By noon, the group was finally sitting in a circle around the barbecue grill. They were all classmates, and once they got together, they chatted endlessly, from complaining about teachers to gossiping about other classes, having a great time. Ethan would occasionally hand Alara freshly grilled skewers, reminding her, "Be careful, it's hot." With food to eat and not having to grill it herself, and seeing Quinn's on the verge of tears glances from time to time, she accepted it all with a clear conscience. Ethan's considerate behavior quickly drew teasing from their classmates. "Whoa, are you two together already?" Yeah, there's something going on between you two." Just as Ethan was about to laugh and explain, Alara spoke up. "No, Ethan and I are just good friends who have known each other since we were little. He's just taking care of me because my leg is injured. Don't get the wrong idea. Besides, Ethan told me he doesn't plan on dating in high school. It would affect his studies." Ethan had indeed said that. In her past life, Ethan had officially confessed to Alara after the college entrance exams, and that's when they got together. Alara's rush to clear things up made Ethan uncomfortable, but he couldn't pinpoint why. Because Alara wasn't lying, but it still made Ethan feel uneasy. Amidst the teasing of the crowd, Quinn ran off crying. Before anyone else could react, Ethan had already chased after her. This scene was exactly the same as in her past life, not changed in the slightest. Alara sat there, quietly watching the two of them run off, watching them run towards their predetermined path. When they returned, Quinn was no longer crying. Her face was full of smug smiles, and she would occasionally raise an eyebrow at Alara. And Ethan, naturally, sat down next to Quinn, and just as he had taken care of Alara, he now took care of Quinn with meticulous attention. Laura Mills quietly picked up her camera and took many pictures of Ethan and Quinn across from her. Alara saw it, but couldn't be bothered to care. Laura was a photography enthusiast and a minor online influencer. In her past life, she had also taken many pictures of Ethan and Quinn. And 10 years later, these pictures became the tools Quinn used to provoke Alara time and time again. Fortunately, she didn't care anymore. Alara even listlessly praised Laura. "You're really good at this." Laura smiled and nodded, then suddenly leaned in and whispered to Alara, "I've captured much more than this. I even know what they talked about when they ran off just now." Alara was speechless. No wonder she would become a famous journalist 10 years later. "Aren't you curious?" "Not curious. No, you have to be curious." "I'm still not curious." Laura shook her head with a profound look, then pulled Alara up. "Let's go to the bathroom." This was just Laura's excuse. But Alara did want to find an excuse to leave, so she went with Laura. In the bathroom, Laura carefully observed their surroundings. Seeing that no one was around, she triumphantly waved the drone in her hand. "My drone captured a lot of good stuff." With that, Laura played the video. The video clearly showed Ethan and Quinn, who had just moved away from the crowd. Quinn was crying and hitting Ethan while saying, "Ethan, you jerk, you clearly said I was your best friend, but today you kept ignoring me for Alara Vance." Ethan didn't resist, letting her hit him. "You and Alara are both my friends. Her leg is injured, so I took extra care of her." "Her leg is injured, not her hands. Her hands can still move. Can't she grill her own food? Why does she need you to take such care of her? We're both your friends, but you're playing favorites." Ethan was getting impatient, rubbing his temples, but he still patiently promised, all right, I'll grill for you later, and I'll take meticulous care of you too, okay?" Hearing this, Quinn finally broke into a smile through her tears. The video ended there. Laura didn't forget to add her commentary. "I have to say, Ethan is a real master of playing both sides. He has you and Quinn wrapped around his little finger." Alara didn't deny it. The Ethan of her past life had indeed had her and Quinn completely mesmerized. "Why are you telling me this?" "Maybe because I find you more interesting now. You've become quite interesting lately. After you jumped, you changed. You, Alara Vance, are like a different person." The first person to notice the change in her wasn't her family, nor was it Ethan, who spent every day with her, but Laura Mills, with whom she had barely interacted in either life. The camping trip wasn't over, but Alara went home early. That morning, Alara and Chloe were taking a walk on the school track. There weren't many people around. She was walking with her crutches, her determined despite disability look attracting a lot of attention. Someone even posted about her on the campus confession page. "Hey page admin, boost this, I'm in love with a resilient and tenacious soul. The way she limps has stolen my heart." There were many replies below. Literary nerd. "Are you sure you're into her soul and not her face?" Flykicker liked Literary Nerd's comment. "Exactly, just admit you're a face judger. No need to bring soul into it." Below that was a stream of laughing emojis. Sassy Senior. "I know who she is. She's Alara Vance from class 12-2, the girl who jumped off the building a while back." The confession page exploded. The post quickly got 99 notifications. So many people asked about the reason for the jump that Sassy Senior, under the spotlight of public attention, finally dropped a series of photos from the camping trip, all of Ethan and Quinn. There were selfies and candid shots. In the photos, they were both smiling happily. Sometimes Quinn would have her arm around Ethan's shoulder. Sometimes they would be whispering in each other's ears, and sometimes Ethan would be taking a bite of a skewer that Quinn held out to him. Sassy Senior. Sigh, anyone who knows Alara knows she likes the guy in the photos, but his heart belongs to someone else. Unrequited love. Sassy Senior didn't say more, but the message was clear. At this age, high school students were just beginning to experience love, and a small hint was enough for them to imagine a whole saga of love and hate. And so, the story of Alara's love triangle spread like wildfire across the campus. She was summoned to the dean's office again. But this time, Alara had no idea what had happened. She was still confused even as she reached the door of the dean's office. In the short months since her rebirth, she had already been to the dean's office twice. It was the same familiar place, the same familiar dean. The difference was, this time, the dean was very kind to her, even closing the glass window in advance. The dean invited her to sit down, handed her a cup of tea, and smiled gently. "I've heard about this matter. It's normal for you to have a crush at this age." "Huh, sir, what are you talking about?" The dean gave her a look that said, "I understand everything. You're still very young. When you get to college and enter the workforce, you'll find that there are many other excellent people out there." Hearing this, Alara roughly understood. The teacher was probably referring to her and Ethan, but that was all in the past. She wouldn't have much to do with Ethan anymore. "Don't worry, sir. My only focus now is on my studies. I have no intention of getting into a relationship." After her past life, Alara no longer had the courage nor the desire to like Ethan anymore. The dean didn't think much of it. A crush at 18 is shallow and fragile. It's easy to suddenly like someone and just as easy to suddenly dislike them. Young people are too impulsive. Just then, Ethan and Quinn arrived. Quinn's eyes were red and swollen. She had clearly just been crying. Ethan's brow was furrowed, his expression displeased. It wasn't until he saw Alara that his face finally broke into a smile. "Alara, you're here. Is your leg better?" he said, pushing Quinn aside and running to Alara's side. Alara nodded slightly and replied softly, "Yes, it's mostly healed." Quinn, left behind, looked awful. The dean, however, was clearly not in a good mood with them. His stern demeanor returned instantly. "Ethan Ward and Quinn Hughes, is that right?" "Yes, sir." The dean's gaze was like a laser, scanning the two of them up and down. "You're seniors. You're already in a relationship. Do you know how much that affects your studies?" Quinn kept her head down, not saying a word, just stubbornly biting her lip as if she had been greatly wronged. Ethan instinctively looked at Alara, afraid she would misunderstand, and quickly explained, "No, we're not in a relationship. I don't like Quinn." Ethan, the tears that had been welling up in Quinn's eyes finally fell, wetting her glasses. She cried hard, sobbing, not yet possessing the pitifully beautiful look she would have 10 years later. Alara still remembered how much Quinn had changed in 10 years, shedding her tomboyish image and becoming gentle and ladylike. Even her crying was silent tears, which, combined with her pale face, would make anyone's heart ache. And it was under the assault of such tears that Alara's husband had listened to Quinn's confessions time and time again, until his heart finally strayed. At first it was, "She's too clingy, she's haunting me, it's so annoying." Gradually it became, "She's liked me for so many years, she never got married because of me, it's a bit pitiful." Finally it was, "I'm willing to fulfill her dying wish. I'm willing to marry her." Alara pulled herself back to the present, telling herself not to dwell on the past. Her new life had just begun. Over here, Ethan, of course, had no patience. Seeing Quinn cry only made him more irritated. "Why do you love to cry so much? Crying, 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 it's so annoying." Hearing this, Alara froze. She remembered that every time Ethan brought up divorce, she would cry too. When he got tired of it, he would say to her irritably, "Why do you love to cry so much?" It's so annoying. Seeing Alara's pale face, the dean thought she was upset and, fearing she would do something drastic again, quickly tried to comfort her. "Miss Vance, I understand the situation. You're excused. You can go back now. Do you need someone to walk you back to class?" "No need, sir. My leg is mostly healed. I can go back by myself." The dean was still worried and had a young intern teacher walk her back, specifically instructing, "Make sure you get her all the way to the classroom." After Alara left, the dean went into full attack mode. You will write a self-criticism and read it in front of the whole school during the Monday flag-raising ceremony. I won't put this on your record this time, but if there's a next time, it won't be so simple." When Alara got back to her dorm, Chloe told her about the campus confession page, and she finally understood the whole story and saw the series of photos. What did she feel when she saw the photos? Not sadness, just a sense of normalcy. After all, she had seen them together twice in person. She just smiled and nodded. In her past life, the two of them had been even more intimate. She had seen it so much that she had become numb and used to it. But one thing did surprise Alara. Chloe had a good personality and many friends. Plus, she loved to gossip. So, by the time Alara was called to the dean's office, she had already found out the whole story. Laura Mills said that Ethan and Quinn were studying together that day when Ethan suddenly heard that someone had confessed to you. He got very anxious and wanted to call you, but you didn't answer, so he was about to go to your house to find you. Of course, Quinn stopped him. She didn't want Ethan to go find you, so she started a huge fight with him. I have a video. With that, she played the video. In it, Ethan and Quinn were arguing fiercely, neither giving an inch. Ethan threw Quinn's hand off. Who do you think you are? What right do you have to stop me? Quinn didn't back down. We haven't finished reviewing today's material. How can you leave for such a trivial matter? This is not a trivial matter. Of course, it's a trivial matter. Alara Vance couldn't stay put in her dorm. She had to go to the track on crutches and got posted on the confession page. Who can she blame? Shut up, who gave you permission to talk about her like that? No one is allowed to bully Alara in front of me, you jerk. Quinn ran off crying. But later, the person who bullied Alara the most was Ethan. The video started to shake. Clearly, the person filming was moving. Oh, she remembered. After returning from the track that day, Alara felt tired and went to bed early, putting her phone on silent. Alara immediately opened her call log. Sure enough, she saw over a dozen missed calls from Ethan and a string of unread messages on her messaging app. She sent a simple reply, "Sorry, I went to bed early yesterday." Ethan didn't reply immediately. The chat interface kept showing, the other person is typing, but after several minutes, no message came through. Alara felt a sense of unease, not knowing what was happening on Ethan's end. She had a faint feeling that it had something to do with Quinn. A minute later, Ethan's message finally came through. "It's okay, get some rest." "What's wrong, Ellie? Is something wrong with Ethan?" Chloe asked, her curiosity finally getting the better of her after seeing Alara staring at her chat with Ethan for so long. "Do you still like Ethan?" "But everyone says he and Quinn." "No, I don't like him anymore. I really think he and Quinn are a good match." Alara looked away from her phone and at Chloe, gently patting her head and saying earnestly, "College entrance exams are coming up. Don't think about who likes whom. You need to focus on studying." Her eyes shone with a gentle light as she looked at Chloe, quietly and intently. Chloe tilted her head slightly, a flash of surprise and shyness in her eyes, and a strange sense of dissonance washed over her. "Ellie, I feel like you've become a different person lately. You don't drink bubble tea anymore. You don't follow dramas or celebrities. You don't run over to the science track students building whenever you have free time. You just read and study all day. It's like you've suddenly become an adult." Become an adult? Wasn't she an adult? A 28-year-old soul living in an 18-year-old body. Hearing these words, Alara was suddenly struck by something. Become an adult. These simple words seemed to hold a world of meaning. Then, an indescribable sense of disorientation washed over her like a tide. Her mind began to flash with scenes from her past life. A happy her, a triumphant her, a broken her, a her lying in a pool of blood, everything intertwined at this moment, plunging her into deep thought, unsure of how to face this sudden change and impact. "What's wrong, Ellie?" "I'm fine, just a little tired. I need to rest." That night, as she was falling asleep, the message that Ethan had been holding back finally came through. "Alara, were you the one who spread those photos?" Alara stared at the message, completely bewildered. She didn't want to be misunderstood and quickly replied, "You mean the photos on the confession page? It has nothing to do with me." The chat interface kept showing that he was typing. A few minutes later, a second message finally arrived. "But this time, you went to the dean's office and you were the only one who wasn't punished. The dean was so nice to you. I can't think of any other reason. It turns out that when you're truly speechless, you can actually laugh out loud." Alara was indeed so angry she laughed. She replied, "Quinn told you that, didn't she?" "Ethan, it's not hard to find out who posted those photos. I hope that in the future, you'll base your words and actions on evidence instead of blindly believing what others say." Ethan was clearly getting anxious. The next second his call came through. Alara didn't want to answer, but he kept calling. "What is it?" I'm sorry. I didn't completely believe Quinn. I just didn't want her to misunderstand you. That's why I had to ask. And even if you did post the photos, it doesn't matter. I'd be happy. It proves you care about me." It does matter. Alara had been wrongly accused too many times. In her past life, she was always misunderstood. Every time she got close to Quinn, Ethan would think she was trying to hurt her. Yet she stubbornly defended herself, exhausting herself trying to prove her innocence every time. In the end, she even resorted to carrying a recording pen with her at all times. "This is very important to me. I can't let people sling mud at me. Self-defense is an unfair burden, but if you let rumors go unchecked, the only one who gets hurt is the one being slandered." She immediately hung up, sent a screenshot of her chat with Ethan and the recording of their call to her homeroom teacher, and explained the situation in detail. After that, no matter how many more times Ethan called, she hung up on all of them. Her homeroom teacher was a very responsible person and investigated the matter overnight. The next day, he told her. The person with the ID, Sassy Senior, was Laura Mills. Laura said she did it just to get attention and online traffic, and never expected it to blow up like this. Ultimately, at the Monday flag-raising ceremony, Ethan and Quinn were seen reading their self-criticisms in front of the entire school. It was only then that she knew what Ethan meant by the school's punishment. Because their behavior in the photos was so intimate, no one believed them even when they repeatedly explained they weren't dating. Quinn was even ordered by the homeroom teacher to apologize to Alara that day. A picture of her apology was even taken and spread on the campus confession page, becoming a campus-wide sensation for a while. That afternoon, after school, Alara had an early dinner and went back to her room to study. Suddenly, she received a message from Ethan. "Alara, come down, I'm downstairs." Huh, what was he doing? Alara really didn't want to go down, so she made an excuse. "Sorry, I'm not home. I'm at the library right now. If you have something to say, just say it now." But Ethan was persistent. "Chloe said you're not at the library." "Alara, please come down. Let's talk. I was wrong about what happened last time." "Great, Chloe, you traitor." Reluctantly, Alara had to go down. When she got downstairs, she saw not only Ethan, but also Quinn. The two were arguing very loudly. "Ethan, don't go too far. I've already apologized." "Why do you have to drag me over here? I don't want to see her." "You did something wrong. Shouldn't you apologize? You don't want to see her. It should be Alara who doesn't want to see you." Quinn angrily pushed Ethan away. "You've gone too far." The two of them started arguing as if no one else was around. It wasn't until Alara got closer that they noticed her. Perhaps it was Alara's probing gaze that made Ethan uneasy. Fearing that Alara would misunderstand his relationship with Quinn again, he subconsciously distanced himself from Quinn and coughed awkwardly a few times. "You're here. Here, this is the lemon tea Quinn picked out for you. It's refreshing." Alara didn't take it. Instead, she stared at him intently. This action directly angered the already furious Quinn. She snatched the lemon tea, swiftly inserted a straw, and took a large, forceful sip, her cheeks puffing out like a hamster's. Then Quinn swallowed angrily and stared straight into Alara's eyes. "It's not poisoned, you can rest assured." Quinn's rudeness made Alara angry too. "Are you okay? Do you have a persecution complex? When did I say the lemon tea was poisoned?" Quinn was not to be outdone. "When you heard Ethan say I picked it, you refused to take it. Isn't that because you hate me?" Although Ethan didn't say anything, the reproach in his eyes made it clear to Alara that he thought so too. However, Quinn was right about one thing. Alara did dislike her, but not to the point of deliberately targeting her. "I never drink lemon tea." These words made both of them freeze. Ethan suddenly remembered something, his face turned pale, and he didn't dare to look at Alara, his eyes darting away. Of course, Alara knew what he was thinking about. During the time she was taken back to the countryside by her grandmother, Alara couldn't get used to it at first. There were too many mosquitoes in the countryside, and her body was covered in itchy bites. The roads were still mud paths, and she had to be extra careful with every step. When it rained, a slight misstep would splash mud all over her. The internet signal was also poor. She often couldn't sleep at night. Her grandmother felt sorry for her. Hearing that people her age liked to drink milk tea, she went to the town to buy her several different flavors. One of them was lemon tea. At that time, she was so happy that she hugged her grandmother and kissed her several times. "Grandma, lemon tea is very thirst-quenching. You have a cup first." But no one expected that, after drinking a few sips, her grandmother broke out in a red rash all over her body and had difficulty breathing. Grandma, to this day, the thought of that scene still made her palms go cold. She didn't even know what was happening at the time. She could only helplessly hold her convulsing grandmother and cry for help until the neighbors came and successfully took her grandmother to the hospital. Later, she learned that her grandmother was allergic to lemons. And because her grandmother had never been exposed to lemons before, she didn't know she was allergic. Thanks to the timely medical attention, her grandmother was saved. But because she was too old and had many underlying health problems, this allergic reaction completely broke her grandmother's health. After that, her grandmother's health was never good. In the past, she could still work in the fields and walk around the streets, a capable and energetic old woman. Later, she could only stay at home for long periods, sitting under the loquat tree. This was the thing Alara regretted most. For many years after, she often had dreams, often trapped in the nightmare of her grandmother buying milk tea. In her dreams, she repeatedly prevented her grandmother from buying milk tea and repeatedly threw the lemon tea to the ground. From then on, she dared not touch lemon tea. At her worst, just hearing the word, lemon, would make her break out in a cold sweat and her heart ache. Ethan knew. Alara had told him before. He understood how devastating that experience had been for Alara. He just forgot. "I'm sorry, Alara. I didn't know, no, I mean I." Ethan had forgotten, but he couldn't admit that he hadn't been paying attention, couldn't admit that he had been so worried about Quinn's affairs lately that he had neglected Alara. No, he hadn't been inattentive, he was just too busy, yes, too busy. Why not drink it? You're not allergic. If you were allergic, you'd feel uncomfortable just smelling it now. So dramatic. Shut up, Ethan was like a rabid beast, his tall body trembling slightly, and then he looked at Alara with a pleading gaze. "Forgive me, Alara, I'm sorry." He couldn't say anything other than "I'm sorry." Quinn didn't know what had happened. She only knew that she had been yelled at, and that Ethan had once again yelled at her because of Alara. Quinn secretly vowed that if she ever had the chance, she would not let Alara off the hook. Meeting Quinn's venomous gaze, Alara knew that Quinn probably hated her to death, but it didn't matter anymore. Alara didn't even care about Ethan anymore, so why would she care about Quinn? After Quinn left, Ethan wanted to go forward and take Alara's hand. Alara avoided him, her face calm and expressionless, not even deigning to give him a single word of blame. This made Ethan even more uneasy. He felt that Alara was suddenly so far away from him. This feeling had been there since Alara jumped. Alara seemed to be shrouded in a layer of mist. She was standing right there, but no matter how hard Ethan tried, he couldn't see her clearly. Every time he tried to get close to Alara, he would hit a cold wall that pushed him away mercilessly. "Why did you ask me to come down?" All his chaotic thoughts were once again thrown into disarray by her calm, stagnant words. Ethan clenched his fists and carefully explained, "I brought Quinn over today just to have her help explain. I'm not with her, I don't like her at all. In my eyes, she's just a buddy." "Okay, I know. Is there anything else?" Alara wasn't very interested in the drama between Ethan and Quinn. She was tired of being entangled with them in her past life, and now that she was reborn, she didn't want to get involved again. It was that same indifferent, detached from the world look again. Ethan choked as if something was stuck in his throat. He couldn't speak for a moment, just staring blankly at the person in front of him. It was Alara, yet it wasn't. It was the familiar, yet even more so, the unfamiliar Alara. For the past month, Ethan often felt like he was facing a strange soul, a soul that was somehow intricately connected to him. "Are you still Alara Vance? The Alara I know. If there's nothing else, I'm going up." Alara was getting irritated by the heat. She just wanted to go back to her room and turn on the air conditioner. "Alara, does what you said before still count?" "What?" Too much time had passed. Of course, Alara didn't remember what she had promised him 10 years ago. Hearing her answer, Ethan felt as if he had been struck by lightning. His face, already tense from the recent events, instantly lost all its color and vitality. "You said that after the college entrance exams, we would be together. Don't you remember?" Oh, so it was that. They had indeed made that promise to each other. They had promised to be together after the college entrance exams, promised to go to the same university, promised to be together forever. But promises are inherently fragile. A vow is only sincere the moment it is spoken. As the days pass, the vow will slowly fade until it becomes a blur. "I remember. So you should work hard and prepare for the final exams." Alara didn't want to provoke Ethan during this critical time in their senior year. She still hoped that the boy who had once pulled her out of the abyss could live a good life. But Alara would not keep her promise this time. This time, she would be the one to break the promise. It was better to be the sinner than the abandoned one. Okay, we both have to work hard. Ethan finally breathed a sigh of relief. No one knew how nervous and scared Ethan had been when he asked. He didn't know what he would do if he heard Alara say she didn't remember. He didn't dare to think about it. The thought was too cruel. Just thinking about it made him feel suffocated. The injuries from the jump had completely healed. Alara rushed back to the countryside to see her grandmother. From a distance, she saw her grandmother sitting under the loquat tree, slowly fanning herself with a cattail fan. The big yellow dog of the village was lying quietly at her grandmother's feet. For many years, this scene that often appeared in her dreams was now clearly displayed before her. "Grandma, my girl." Before coming, Alara had thought, "I must smile, I can't cry, or Grandma will worry." But as soon as she saw the scene under the loquat tree, her tears burst forth. She really, really missed her grandmother. "Why are you crying? You're a big girl now, but you still cry whenever you see Grandma." "I just missed you so much, Grandma." Her grandmother had already prepared her favorite dishes, and there was a freshly picked watermelon soaking in the water tank. During the meal, she chattered on and on about all the interesting things that had happened recently. Her grandmother watched her with a smile, patting her back to help her breathe when she ate too fast. "Grandma, why do you look so much older? Did her grandmother have so many wrinkles 10 years ago? Was her grandmother's back so stooped? Was she so thin back then?" An incredible thought like a shooting star flashed through her mind. "What is it? You've lost so much weight." The strong feeling seemed to ignite her entire soul, making her breathing quicken. Why was she able to be reborn? Was it really because of the mercy of the gods? She couldn't help but wonder if her rebirth was somehow connected to her grandmother. Alara didn't dare to think about it further. The hand holding the chopsticks was trembling. "Grandma, my girl, don't overthink it. Your most important task now is to study. If you get into a good university, find a good job, and can live a good life, Grandma will be at ease." "I will, Grandma." Back at school, Alara threw herself into her studies. This time, she wanted to go to a university in the south. She wanted to see the sea, to see a place where it was spring all year round. Her grandmother was from the south, born in the watery region of Gyeongnan. In her past life, she had promised her grandmother that after she graduated and found a job, she would save some money and take her back to see it. But until her grandmother died, until she herself died, she had never left the city that had trapped her. Fortunately, this time she didn't have to follow in Ethan's footsteps, didn't have to stay in the north. Let Ethan and Quinn stay in the north. Before she knew it, a semester had passed. Winter break was here. Alara had no intention of staying in the city. She would definitely go back to be with her grandmother. Just before she left, she happened to run into Ethan on the street. "Alara, where are you going with your luggage?" "Back to my grandma's." "Let me take you back." Just as he said that, Ethan's phone rang. Alara inadvertently glanced at the caller ID, Little Miss Trouble. She had seen this contact name in her past life. At that time, Ethan had said it was a distant cousin who had developed depression due to her parents' divorce and was very dependent on him. Back then, Alara had trusted Ethan completely and had no doubts about his explanation. Ethan frowned, subconsciously glanced at Alara, and then answered the phone. "Why, Ethan, my parents are really getting a divorce this time." It was Quinn's voice. So there was no depressed distant cousin. She had been kept in the dark from the very beginning. "Don't cry, where are you now?" "I ran away. I don't know where I am." "Why, you have to come find me." Ethan was very anxious and nervous. He was so flustered that he didn't even have time to say goodbye to Alara before he hurriedly flagged down a taxi on the side of the road. Don't be scared, send me your location. I'm coming to find you now, stop crying. You're already ugly, and you'll be even uglier if you cry." Ethan anxiously flagged down a car while trying to comfort the person on the other end of the line. He didn't look back at Alara once. So 10 years ago, Ethan already cared so much for Quinn. Alara turned and left with her luggage, her mind like a whirlwind. All the little details that she had never noticed or ignored before now flooded her like a storm. There was the time Ethan missed her birthday, the time he left in the middle of a date after receiving a call from Little Miss Trouble. The countless times he went out in the middle of the night for Little Miss Trouble. So, in those distant 10 years, Quinn had inserted herself between them in a way that no one else could see. In those 10 years, She thought that the girl who had confessed to Ethan at the graduation ceremony had moved on from their lives. She had naively believed that before Quinn was diagnosed with a terminal illness, she and Ethan didn't have much contact. She never thought that Quinn had quietly infiltrated her life with Ethan so long ago. Looking back now, they had always been in contact. That contact seemed insignificant, but one day, it completely destroyed her marriage with Ethan. The truth was so cruel, was the love she once thought the 18-year-old boy had for her, full of joy and devotion, really single-minded. A bone-chilling cold spread from the depths of her soul, making her hands and feet cold, and she could barely stand. "Miss, are you okay?" A police officer quickly noticed Alara as she was crossing the road, looking dazed and pale. The officer hurried over to support her, very concerned. "I'm fine, it must be low blood sugar." She made up an excuse. The officer helped her to the side of the road, took out a few caramels from his pocket, and put them in her hand. "Eat these, you have to take low blood sugar seriously." "Thank you. My daughter has low blood sugar too, so I always carry a few with me wherever I go." The caramels were very sweet, cloyingly so. "My wife has low blood sugar, so I always have to carry candy with me wherever I go." The man's voice seemed to come from a distant sky. She remembered in her past life, after she started working, she often didn't eat on time, which led to low blood sugar. At that time, Ethan's pockets would also always have caramels, and he would pop one into her mouth whenever she felt unwell. The irony was, he even had them on the day of their divorce. He was the one who had tried so hard to get a divorce, yet he still pretended to love her. After a few hours' journey, she finally arrived at her grandmother's place. Her grandmother was still sitting under the loquat tree, smiling at her. The sun was just right, and the years were peaceful. Alara stayed in the countryside for 2 days before she finally received a call from Ethan. "Alara, are you at your grandma's now? Is something wrong?" "No, I just wanted to hear your voice." After saying that, Ethan hung up. Alara found it strange, but didn't think much of it. Unexpectedly, the next day, another call came. This time, Ethan's voice was clearly tense and tinged with a faint, deep pain. "Alara, you haven't sent me any messages lately. Are you angry?" Alara was picking vegetables, and she said casually, "No, you're overthinking it." But these words did not reassure Ethan. "Alara, will you believe me, please? The person I like has always been you. When I heard she ran away that day, I suddenly remembered the day you ran away from home when you were 12. I was so scared and worried. The 12-year-old me didn't protect you well, so I want to make up for it. I don't want to see anyone around me get into trouble because of their parents' conflicts again. That's why I usually take such good care of Quinn. I feel like she's a lot like the you from back then." Ethan's explanation continued, but Alara didn't have much of a mind to listen. She didn't want to worry her grandmother, so she walked away with her phone. "Ethan, what's wrong? Are you still angry?" "I won't talk to her anymore." Facing the 18-year-old Ethan, Alara always felt a little helpless and tired. "I'm not angry, and there's nothing to be angry about." The biggest grudges were between her and the 28-year-old Ethan, and had nothing to do with this still immature, inexperienced 18-year-old boy. "Ethan, there's nothing wrong with being willing to help the weak. You've been kind and warm-hearted since you were a child. You would take the initiative to befriend bullied and isolated classmates. You would be considerate of the old man who sold fruit on the roadside, buying a big bag of fruit every time you passed by. You love small animals and would take stray cats to be spayed. Even if you got scratched and bitten, kindness is never wrong. Don't deny the good deeds you've done because of anyone. In their eyes, you, Ethan Ward, are a savior, but Ethan, I can't always rely on you. I have to learn to grow up. I want to be my own savior." They were clearly words of praise, but Ethan heard them as having an indefinable farewell meaning. Every word seemed to be shrouded in a wisp of smoke, making the praise that should have been pleasant feel heavy. In a daze, he felt that Alara was so far away from him, like the moon in the sky, so far that he might spend his whole life chasing her and never reach her side. Ethan's mind flashed back to the dream. Alara had no idea what kind of dream Ethan had been trapped in last night. In that dream, he held a blood-soaked Alara tightly, his cries heart-wrenching, as if the whole world had collapsed with her. The scene was so real that every drop of blood that splattered on the ground, every faint breath Alara took, was deeply imprinted in his heart. After holding a funeral for Alara, Ethan, who had always been skeptical of ghosts and gods, began to devoutly pray to them. He saw himself walking into a temple, slowly kneeling before a statue of Buddha, his hands clasped together, his forehead hitting the ground again and again, mumbling, "If the heavens have a spirit, I am willing to pay any price, even if my soul is scattered and I never enter reincarnation, just to bring her back." Although it was just a dream, the bone-deep pain and despair were so real that it was unbearable. It was as if he had really experienced it, and the feeling lingered for a long time. Finally, Ethan woke up from this nightmare. However, when he opened his eyes and looked at the empty room, the twisting pain and sorrow in his heart still lingered. He pleaded with an almost desperate plea, "Alara, I want to see you. Can I come find you now?" Alara suddenly remembered back in middle school, Ethan had secretly come to the countryside to find her many times, afraid that Alara wouldn't get used to rural life. Each time, he would carry large bags of things for Alara. At that time, Alara would even joke with him, "Oh, the bandit is back in the village." When Alara first came back to the village, there was no Wi-Fi. She could only use her pitifully small amount of data to chat with him, not even daring to video call. Ethan was afraid she would be bored, so as soon as he had time on the weekends, he would rush back to help her install Wi-Fi. Even the password was a combination of the first letters of their English names and their birthdays. It hadn't been changed for so many years. "If you want to come, just come. Even if I say no, you'll come secretly anyway. Alara, I'm about to leave. Do you need me to bring anything back for you? No need to trouble yourself, just come as you are." After hanging up, Ethan was almost packed. He had 2 sets of clothes and some toiletries in his backpack and rushed out the door. As he was leaving, he happened to get a call from Quinn. This time, he felt an inexplicable annoyance, but he still answered. "If you have something to say it quickly." The impatience in his tone was not hidden at all. "Why are you being so mean to me again? I didn't do anything to you." Ethan looked down at the time, afraid he would miss his high-speed train, so he started running while on the phone. "If there's nothing, I'm hanging up." "There is something, my parents, Quinn, a roar from him scared Quinn into silence. Ethan knew it was wrong to take his anger out on Quinn because of a dream, but he couldn't control himself. His malice poured out, as if he were still trapped in the dream. Just thinking about how in the dream he had agreed to marry Quinn simply because he pitied her, and thus lost Alara forever. Thinking about this, he couldn't stop himself from hating Quinn. He even maliciously thought it would be better if Quinn disappeared forever. Just like in the dream, after the 28-year-old Ethan returned from the temple, he killed his new wife. The next day, he dressed in a suit and went to Alara's grave as usual, then slit his wrists in front of her tombstone. The nightmare ended there. But in an instant, Ethan was shocked by his own thoughts. How could he have such a terrible thought? He felt that he had been too deeply affected by the dream, to the point where he couldn't distinguish between dream and reality. "I'm sorry, I was too impulsive just now." It's okay, I don't blame you. You were probably just worried that Alara would be angry, that's why you were like that. I won't blame you." They were words of concern, but they were also subtly implying that Alara was willful and petty. Ethan suddenly remembered what had happened in the dream. The Quinn in the dream often said similar things in front of him. Her understanding only served to make Alara seem more petty and unreasonable. In the dream, he had only felt that Alara was becoming more and more willful and rude, always making a fuss over small things. He couldn't deal with a wife who was like a shrew, so he had to stay in a hotel, started staying out all night, and the gap between them grew deeper and deeper. Now, the 18-year-old Ethan, looking at the actions of the people in the dream from a bystander's perspective, felt that something was wrong with Quinn everywhere. His tone, which had just softened, became cold again. "Alara wouldn't get angry over such small things. She just told me that it was right for me to help you. She's a good person, and I don't want you to misunderstand her." Quinn was scared by his strange, distant tone and didn't dare to listen any longer, hanging up in a panic. Ethan put away his phone, bought a few bags of fruit and gifts at the mall, and got on the high-speed train with anticipation. By the time it got dark, Ethan finally saw the loquat tree in the courtyard and the big yellow dog. That night, Ethan slept in Alara's room, while Alara slept with her grandmother. Around 2 or 3 in the morning, Alara stumbled into Ethan's room, her whole body trembling violently. "Ethan, something's wrong with Grandma. Get up, quick." Ethan was woken up, and the first thing he saw was a terrified Alara who looked like half her life force had been drained away. He didn't have time to ask questions and followed Alara back to her grandmother's room. He saw her grandmother lying in bed, gasping for breath, her eyes shut tight, not responding no matter how they called her. Ethan was just an 18-year-old boy who hadn't experienced much. He panicked and was about to call for an ambulance. But this was a village. "Carry Grandma on your back and take her to Uncle Samuel's place, quick." It wasn't until dawn that the three of them finally got Grandma to the town hospital. When Grandma was finally wheeled into the operating room, Alara finally let go, her whole body collapsing like a puppet with its strings cut, slumping to the floor. Ethan held her in his arms, his voice choked with sobs. "It's going to be okay. Grandma will be okay." The taut nerves in her mind suddenly snapped. She could no longer suppress the surging grief and fear in her heart and burst into tears. "Why is this happening? Why? It's all my fault. If I hadn't come back, nothing would have happened to Grandma." Alara sobbed and muttered to herself. In her past life, nothing had happened to Grandma at this time. Her mind kept flashing back to the moments before her death, and the time she had spent with her grandmother. Alara finally understood. Her rebirth must have been because her grandmother did something. If her rebirth required her grandmother to pay such a heavy price, then what was the point of her being reborn? Was God playing a joke on her? Uncle Samuel, wearing pajamas and a military greatcoat, was arguing with someone on the phone. "Howard, are you crazy? This is your own mother is on the verge of death, and you're saying you can't come back. You're a goddamn animal." By dawn, Grandma was finally wheeled out of the operating room. The grandmother on the hospital bed had lost all the vitality she had just a day ago, her whole body shrouded in a thick aura of death. The doctor sighed, his face grim, and called Uncle Samuel out. Ethan had just gone down to buy food, so only Alara and her grandmother were left in the room. "Grandma." Alara held her grandmother's hand tightly, tears streaming down her face. "My girl, you, this time." Grandma's voice was as faint as a thread, her breathing heavy. "I'm here." Alara pressed her ear close to her grandmother, trying to hear every word. "You will be safe, don't hate, live well. Ethan let you come back, so don't hate him." Her grandmother had often told her about her grandfather. She was a Southern bride who had been trafficked to the North. She had spent most of her life hating her grandfather and the traffickers. Because of this, she also disliked her son, Howard. To her, Howard was the child she had been forced to bear, a brand of shame on her body. In the hospital room, her grandmother gradually fell silent, the world stood still. Alara maintained her position with her ear pressed against her grandmother's body, staring blankly at the curtains swaying in the wind. She felt that her grandmother must have gone with the wind. When the hearse came to take her grandmother away, Howard finally came back with her younger brother. She stood there, her face expressionless, her gaze empty, as she looked at her father. A winter break passed, and she finally returned to school. This was the last semester before the final exams, and everyone was in a state of intense review. Alara and Ethan tacitly avoided mentioning what had happened during the winter break. When they occasionally met, Alara would exchange a few pleasantries with him and then hurry back to the classroom to study. Time flew by. She threw herself into her studies, oblivious to the world outside, and had almost no energy to pay attention to what was happening with Ethan and Quinn. One day, Chloe mentioned them. "Something happened to Quinn recently." "What?" Alara didn't react at first. "I don't know who spread it, but there's a rumor that Quinn's mother was a homewrecker who broke up a marriage. Quinn hasn't been to school for a week because of it. Ethan is close to her, but he hasn't reacted much this time." "No reaction?" "Yeah, Quinn came to school today and had a big fight with Ethan. She said Ethan wasn't loyal, that he knew who the culprit was but was protecting her." This was too unusual. Alara suddenly looked up, a trace of unease welling up in her heart. The 18-year-old Ethan wouldn't do something like this. The 18-year-old Ethan was the most enthusiastic, loved to meddle in other people's business, and would never do something disloyal to protect someone. At this time, Ethan was simple. His world was black and white. Right was right, wrong was wrong. The justice he believed in was more important to him than anything else. Could he have come back too? Alara couldn't focus on her books anymore. She no longer resented the 28-year-old Ethan, but she also knew how paranoid he was. Alara could easily get rid of the 18-year-old Ethan, but she was afraid that the appearance of the 28-year-old Ethan would disrupt her plans. Ethan was a contradictory and selfish person. 10 years later, even though he was the one who kept bringing up divorce, he could still say things like, "Alara, you can never leave me." Who spread it? I don't know. It's all over the place now. Who can tell who the original culprit is? And I don't know what happened during the winter break, but Ethan has been acting strange. Winter break. Now that she thought about it, Ethan was indeed strange during the winter break. Alara felt uneasy, and her mind was in turmoil the whole morning. She had to test Ethan. As soon as school was out, she received a message from Ethan, "I'm on the school rooftop." "Let's talk, Alara." It was exactly what she needed. Alara had no reason to refuse. Alara packed her bag and went to the rooftop. On the way, her heart was heavy with mixed emotions. She thought, "I'm not mentally prepared to face the 28-year-old Ethan." The wind on the rooftop was strong. Alara pushed open the iron door, and a gust of wind howled, making her heart even more chaotic. She composed herself and looked up to see Ethan standing by the wall, looking at the scenery. "You're here, Alara?" "Yes." Alara stood at the iron door and didn't go any further. She subconsciously didn't want to get too close to Ethan. "What do you want to talk about?" Ethan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stood there quietly, his gaze locked on Alara. The world seemed to be just the two of them, and his eyes held a tenderness warmer than the spring breeze. "Ethan, speak." Clearly, Alara had no patience. "Wouldn't it be better to spend this time studying? I've been having the same dream over and over these past few days." Alara's heart skipped a beat. She already guessed what Ethan had dreamt about. Ethan continued, "In the dream, we got together naturally, but we divorced a few years later, and you got into a car accident on the day of the divorce." Alara could barely control her facial expression. The lingering pain and bitterness deep inside her were reawakened, but it was fleeting. She touched her heart. Hearing about her past life, she felt almost nothing there anymore. Just a dream, and not back like her? That made things easier. She smiled in relief. "It's just a dream. You're taking it too seriously." Ethan stared into her eyes. "Is it really just a dream?" "Of course." "Then why have you been avoiding me? Did you have the same dream?" Ethan pressed step by step. He was like that. The more nervous and anxious he got, the more aggressive he became, as if that could hide his inner panic. Alara met his gaze. "What? So nervous? Did you do something to wrong me in the dream?" She pretended not to know anything and joked with him. Hearing this, Ethan's face changed dramatically, and he was completely flustered. No, I was just afraid you would be scared. It's just a dream, don't overthink it." After saying that, Alara wanted to leave. She had confirmed that the 28-year-old Ethan hadn't come back, so she was relieved and there was no need to waste time here. Just as she was about to say goodbye to Ethan, the iron door was pushed open. Quinn walked in. Quinn walked right past Alara and straight to Ethan. "Ethan, you said you had something to do. Was it to have a secret meeting with her here?" Alara didn't want to deal with Quinn, but her words were too harsh. She was reborn, how could she let Quinn bully her? If she could still be bullied, then her rebirth was for nothing. She immediately took a few steps forward and slapped Quinn hard. She had wanted to give Quinn this slap for a long time. In her past life, after Quinn had pulled the outrageous stunt of wanting to marry Ethan, she had gone to Quinn's hospital room to confront her. At that time, Quinn had hidden behind Ethan, looking pitiful and fragile. "I didn't mean to break you up. I just love Ethan too much, that's why I made such a rude request." Ethan, watching from the side, was heartbroken. He comforted her while giving Alara a look that said, "Don't cause any more trouble." But Alara was furious at the time, and this explanation only made her angrier. She took a few steps forward to slap Quinn, but was stopped by Ethan. Ethan held her hand tightly, his eyes cold. "Alara Vance, stop being so unreasonable. Can't you stop acting like a mad dog, biting everyone you see?" Then, she was forcefully pushed away by Ethan, her back hitting the corner of a table. She immediately broke out in a cold sweat from the pain, her face contorted. And Ethan just stood there, coldly watching her pathetic state. This scene was now replaying itself. Alara's hand was tightly gripped by Ethan. He looked at her with an incredulous expression, as if he couldn't understand why Alara would hit someone over such a simple sentence. "Why did you hit her? When did you become so unreasonable? I know you're in a bad mood because of your grandmother's death, but you can't take it out on others." Sure enough, Ethan was Ethan. Whether it was the 28-year-old Ethan or the 18-year-old Ethan, he would always resolutely stand on Quinn's side. No matter what Quinn said or did, as long as she, Alara, resisted, it was wrong, and she would be nailed with the crime of being unreasonable. All the prejudices and anger that had gradually subsided during the winter break were reignited at this moment, and they burned even more fiercely. Alara suddenly felt that she was too naive. How could she think that the 18-year-old Ethan was innocent? They were the same person. How could the past and the future be separated? Alara fiercely threw off Ethan's hand, forcing herself to suppress her anger so that she wouldn't slap him. "I know you don't like Quinn. I've already stayed away from her. Why won't you let her go? How can your heart be so cruel?" How can your heart be so cruel? She had heard this phrase too many times. These words were like opening Pandora's box, causing all of Alara's suppressed negative emotions to reach their peak at this moment. "What do you mean I won't let her go?" Quinn finally snapped out of it, glaring at Alara hatefully. "To get back at me for misunderstanding you about the photos on the confession page, you spread rumors all over campus that I'm an illegitimate daughter, that my mother was a homewrecker." It was true. Quinn was indeed an illegitimate daughter, and her mother had been the other woman. But a man who liked to cheat wouldn't be faithful to one person. Sure enough, Quinn's father had recently found another mistress, and for the past 2 years, Quinn's parents had been fighting about a divorce. Alara knew about this, but she had never thought of using it to attack Quinn. People can't choose their origins. No matter how much Alara disliked Quinn, she wouldn't use this to attack her. Besides, her own origins weren't exactly something to be proud of. Her father was the product of a rape, and as Howard's child, didn't she also have tainted blood in her veins? From this perspective, she was no better than Quinn. So how could she use someone's origins to hurt them? But clearly, Ethan didn't believe her. His gaze was filled with condemnation and a self-righteous tolerance. "I didn't do it. As long as you go and clarify that this was all something you made up to target Quinn." "Was it made up? Isn't it true?" Ethan looked at her with an incredulous, stranger's gaze. "Even if it's true, it's not a reason for you to attack her. Your background doesn't prove anything. And if we're talking about birth, your father was—" Ethan didn't finish, but they both knew what he meant. Ethan ultimately didn't reveal Alara's origins in front of Quinn. "I don't know why you hate her so much, but I've already stayed away from Quinn for your sake. Just don't hurt the innocent anymore." She could no longer control herself and kicked Ethan hard. Ethan lost his balance and fell to the ground. Quinn screamed and rushed to help him up. "Are you crazy? You did such a vicious thing. How can you have the face to hit someone?" Alara ignored Quinn. Her gaze went straight past Quinn and fixed on Ethan. "I told you last time, you need to have evidence for your words and actions. You need to use your brain. Don't just blindly believe what people say just because you have an empty head." After being helped up, Ethan stared at Alara with wide, shocked eyes, not expecting her to hit him. He didn't understand what was wrong with Alara. The moment she kicked him, it was as if they really had some irreconcilable conflict. Alara was disgusted with him. This realization made Ethan barely able to stand up straight. He didn't know if it was because the kick was too hard, but the pain made it impossible for him to think about anything else. He could only barely stabilize himself, wanting to go forward and take Alara's hand, but he was frozen in place by her undisguised disgust and contempt. "I didn't blame you, I just don't want you to do the wrong thing. You have no right to judge my actions. If one day I really do something wrong, the law will punish me. It's not your place, you self-righteous knight." The rumors came and went quickly. With the final exams approaching, everyone's energy was mostly focused on studying. Since that day, Ethan and Alara had barely spoken. Ethan would occasionally pass by Alara's classroom, but he only passed by in the hallway, never staying long and never seeking her out. Chloe saw that something was wrong and asked her, "Did you and Ethan break up?" "Yeah." With less than 100 days until the final exams, Alara was practically giving her all to studying. She put in several times more effort than in her past life to finally pick up the high school knowledge she had forgot. "Yeah, that's good. By the way, I ran into Ethan just now, and he stopped me to ask about you." "What about?" Alara frowned, finding Ethan really annoying. "He asked me if I knew which university you were applying to, as if I would tell him that." "Thanks, But Alara, you have to hold on. Don't get entangled with Ethan again. Chloe's chubby face was unusually serious. Although I've never been in a relationship, I know Ethan is unreliable. To put it nicely, he's warm-hearted. To put it bluntly, he's clueless. It's fine to be friends with him, but if you're together, you have to accept that he'll always be giving his so-called kindness and attention to others, and thus neglect you. The most terrifying thing is, once you resist and express your dissatisfaction, he and the people around him will condemn you for not being generous enough, not kind enough. He'll stand on a moral high ground and belittle you to nothing. A gust of wind suddenly blew into the classroom. With a whoosh, the pages of the book, as if by magic, began to flip rapidly. 1 page, 2 pages in the blink of an eye, several pages had been turned. Her heart also jumped with these flipping pages. Alara heard herself say, "Don't worry, not this time." Chloe had told her this before. Last time, she had just thought Chloe was worrying for nothing and laughed it off. This time, she wouldn't make the same mistake again. On the eve of the final exams, Alara received a message from Ethan. "Alara, let's make up. Let's not fight anymore." Alara looked at the message, not knowing how to reply for a moment. Make up? She couldn't do it anymore. Alara had told herself that she shouldn't take her anger out on the 18-year-old Ethan. He was innocent. But the conflict on the rooftop made her realize again that the 18-year-old Ethan and the 28-year-old Ethan were the same person. How could the past and the future be separated? Her gaze fell on the calendar, which clearly marked that there were only 35 days left until the final exams. She thought of the past, of her grandmother telling her not to resent Ethan before she died, saying that she could come back because of him. Although she didn't know the details, her heart softened. Alara replied to him, "Study hard, do well on the exams. I'll give you my answer after the finals." Ethan was very happy to receive this reply. It clearly meant that Alara had forgiven him. Besides, Alara had always been soft-hearted. How could she stay angry with him for too long? Soon, a message from Ethan came. "Okay, I promise you." The illegitimate daughter incident gradually subsided, but unexpectedly, a month later, a video suddenly appeared in the public eye. This time, it was famous not only within the school, but also on the internet. It was a video shot from a hidden angle. The location was the residential complex where Quinn lived, and the main characters were 2 middle-aged women and an uncle. The 2 women were pulling each other's hair, while the man was smoking on the side, occasionally cursing. Most importantly, another younger woman appeared in the video later, looking to be in her 30s, much younger than the other 3, with a good figure and wearing yoga clothes. When she appeared, the scene became even more chaotic. The 2 women who were still fighting a moment ago now tacitly ganged up on the yoga-clad woman, rushing towards her. The smoking man couldn't stay idle anymore. He quickly threw down his cigarette, blocked the 2 frantic women, and protected the yoga woman behind him. Quinn's parents had both attended parent-teacher conferences, so people who were familiar with her naturally recognized them. The illegitimate daughter incident once again swept the campus. The school administration couldn't stop it. Quinn couldn't stand the strange looks from those around her. After the incident, she ran to the school rooftop and was about to jump. The principal was so anxious he was about to cry. A student had just jumped last semester. If it happened again, he would lose his job as principal. The principal and Quinn's homeroom teacher rushed to the rooftop. "Miss, don't be impulsive. Whatever is bothering you, you can come down and talk about it. We will all help you." "You can't help me. No one can help me." Quinn was in a frenzy, standing on the edge of the rooftop, swaying in the wind, a terrifying sight to behold. The principal was so anxious he was about to cry. "Miss, please don't move." On the other side, someone began to explain to the principal what had happened to Quinn recently. The more the principal heard, the more his head hurt. Ethan also came up. He really didn't expect Quinn to actually jump. "Quinn, come down. We can talk about whatever it is." "Ethan, I hate you. Why did you help me before and then abandon me? It's all because of Alara Vance. She's the one who made me so miserable, and you still choose her." Alara was studying in the library when her homeroom teacher suddenly called her to the rooftop, saying that Quinn was threatening to jump and had specifically asked to see her. By the time she ran to the rooftop, there were already many police officers there. Quinn was standing on the wall, crying her heart out, cursing Ethan for abandoning her and cursing Alara for being cruel. "I didn't abandon you. I will never abandon you. Come down first, be good." Ethan approached step by step, but this only made Quinn more agitated. "Don't come any closer, my reputation is ruined. Ruined by Alara Vance, how can I go on living? I'll help you, I'll teach her a lesson. Actually, Alara is not as good as you." Realizing what Ethan was about to say, Alara suddenly shouted. Ethan turned around in shock and met her gaze. There was surprise in his eyes, but not a shred of apology or intention to stop. Alara knew she couldn't stop Ethan. She stood there, her heart dead, staring at Ethan's back. She watched as Ethan quickly turned his head, unhesitatingly leaving her with his resolute back. She only heard his cold and heartless words. Her grandmother was sold by human traffickers, and her father is the bastard son of that rapist. Alara Vance has the blood of sin flowing through her veins, so being an illegitimate daughter is no big deal. There are many people in this world who are worse off than you. Ethan's voice wasn't loud, but it was enough to be heard throughout the rooftop. Like a devil's whisper, every word was a death sentence for Alara. In that instant, time seemed to freeze. The whole world fell silent. Even the few police officers not far away were drawn in by this sudden scene, their eyes filled with shock and confusion. To save Quinn's life, Ethan didn't hesitate to trample her into the mud. Alara didn't know how she left. She only vaguely remembered her homeroom teacher staying by her side, telling her, "Alara Vance, you are just you. Every drop of blood in your body is clean." Later, she was dazedly sent out of the school by her homeroom teacher. Howard and Penelope Vance came to pick her up. When she got home, she rushed to her room and locked herself in, trying to shut out everything around her. A voice kept ringing in her ears. "She has the blood of sin flowing through her veins. She has the blood of sin flowing through her veins. She has the blood of sin flowing through her veins." Alara's emotions had completely collapsed. She didn't understand why she had come back. Not only had she failed to change her regrets and let her grandmother live longer, but her own situation had also become worse. If her rebirth was only to make her life worse than her previous one, then what was the point of coming back? She frantically ran her hands through her hair, her gaze drawn to the fruit knife on the table. A voice in her head told her, "Just die and you'll be free." Fate had made her live in Quinn's shadow time and time again, unable to struggle. Like a puppet being manipulated, she grabbed the fruit knife and was about to cut her wrist. In that instant, the door was kicked open. Howard rushed over and grabbed the fruit knife, while Penelope desperately tried to pry her hand open. Her younger brother, who had never been close to her, was also crying and shouting, "Let go, sister." A human life was too heavy. Even her parents, who had never liked her, were willing to offer their meager affection at this moment. Howard's hand was cut to the bone by the blade, and Penelope's arm was also cut by the flailing fruit knife. The blood was so red as when she was hit by a car in her past life. Alara fainted. In her dream, she was in her grandmother's warm embrace, and her grandmother whispered in her ear, "My girl, you must live happily. Promise Grandma you have to live well." When she woke up, she heard arguing at the door. "Mr. Ward, you are a teacher yourself. How could you raise such a child?" "No, some children are children, but he is not. He is an animal. To save someone else, he was going to force my daughter to her death." Ethan didn't mean it that way, he was just anxious. Anxious? What a fine excuse. "My daughter cut her wrists yesterday. A moment later, and she would have been dead." Howard's voice was loud, with no attempt to hide it, drawing out the neighbors to watch. Ethan's parents were both university professors and very concerned with their reputation. Now they were completely embarrassed, and under the scrutiny of everyone, they left shamefacedly. After the commotion of Quinn's jump, the school began to thoroughly investigate the rumors of her being an illegitimate child. Quinn's parents even reported the leak of the video online to the police. This was the internet age, everything left a trace. After 2 days of effort, the school and the police finally found the culprit. Both incidents were the work of one person, Lara Mills. Because of the confession page incident, she had been ostracized and cold-shouldered by Quinn and her friends. Laura held a grudge against Quinn. So when she learned that Quinn's parents were getting a divorce, she began to secretly investigate the reason. Through Quinn's neighbors, she learned about all the grievances between Quinn's parents, especially the fact that the mother had been a homewrecker. The original wife had made a huge scene at their home, and it was a well-remembered incident in the community. To get revenge on Quinn, Laura spread the news. Her initial success made her too cocky. Later, the school's lenient punishment, coupled with the lure of profit, made Laura finally give in to temptation. She continued to follow Quinn's family until she filmed the video of the 3 women fighting over one man. She didn't hesitate to send the secretly filmed video to a marketing account and earned her first pot of gold. In the end, Laura Mills, who had caused all this trouble, was expelled from school. Because she was already 18, she was also detained by the police for 10 days. And so, the jumping incident finally came to a close, but its aftershocks still lingered. Ethan and Quinn were also pointed at and talked about, especially since Quinn had also wrongly accused Alara once after the confession page incident was exposed. Now, whenever Quinn was mentioned, classmates would joke, maybe one day Quinn will get hit by bird droppings and think it was Alara's doing. For a while, Alara became the poster child for being a big sucker in everyone's eyes. A few days later, it was said that Ethan's family was preparing to move. Ethan refused and had a huge fight with his parents, even threatening to kill himself if they moved. Helplessly, his parents had to give up the idea. One day, Alara returned to school. She ran into Ethan head-on. Alara had already blocked and deleted Ethan's contact information. She knew that Ethan had been trying to find her for the past few days, often waiting at her door, and every time he was discovered by Howard, he would get a good scolding. Helpless, Ethan had to give up his plan of squatting at her door and had been trying to contact her through Chloe. But Chloe, besides cursing him, just cursed him more. According to Chloe, the class sports representative had even beaten up Ethan, and both were punished with a week of cleaning the toilets. Looking at the photo Chloe sent of Ethan's bruised and swollen face, Alara only felt a sense of satisfaction. She thought she would have to break her promise to her grandmother. She could no longer not hate Ethan. Get lost. I'm sorry, Alara. Let me explain. I was just too anxious that day. I was misled by Quinn into thinking you were the one who filmed the video, so I wanted to stand up for her. You're ridiculous, Ethan. I sometimes really wonder, did Quinn put a spell on you? How can you believe everything she says? It was the same in her past life. A simple sentence from Quinn could convict Alara. Sometimes, even if Quinn just frowned, Ethan would think that Alara was bullying her. Get lost, Ethan. Don't come near me again. Alara pushed past Ethan, went straight to her desk, packed up her things, and moved to an empty seat in the back row. She naturally didn't want to be Ethan's deskmate anymore, not for a single moment. Ethan watched her from beginning to end, without saying a word, without trying to stop her. But then Quinn stood up, crying and apologizing to Alara. I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to suspect you, Alara. I have no grudge against Laura Mills. How could I have known she would do that? I thought. Enough, shut up, Ethan suddenly kicked a desk hard, and a loud bang echoed in the classroom. Ethan was like a rabid beast, glaring at Quinn. Quinn, aren't you supposed to be Alara's good friend? Why do you keep misunderstanding her? What are your intentions? Quinn was so scared she flinched, and even her crying stopped. The biggest regret of my life is that 3 damn years ago, when you were being bullied by those hooligans, I stupidly stood up and helped you. I should have just been indifferent, a bystander, and watched you fall into that bottomless abyss. These words were like a sharp blade, stabbing into the hearts of everyone present. Their viciousness and cruelty were simply appalling. For a moment, everyone seemed to be frozen, staring at Ethan and Quinn with wide eyes. The air seemed to freeze, and the entire scene fell into a dead silence. Even Alara stopped what she was doing and looked at Ethan in surprise. Quinn was really crying now. She seemed to be unable to take it anymore and ran out of the classroom. And Ethan, because of his extreme behavior, was also ordered by the school not to come to school and to study at home. One day, she went out to take out the trash. Unfortunately, she ran into Ethan. Ethan looked haggard and tired, his eyes bloodshot. It had only been a few days, but he looked like a different person, gloomy, exuding a sense of decay and pain. The moment he saw her, his dull eyes lit up. He staggered to his feet as if he could fall at any moment. His voice trembled terribly. You, Alara, I'm sorry. I really didn't mean to hurt you. Please don't ignore me. Get lost. Alara didn't even want to look at him, just finding his face disgusting. But then Ethan actually knelt down, begging her humbly. Don't leave me. Please don't leave me like in the dream, I beg you. That wasn't a dream. Alara looked down at him, her eyes flashing with a flame of anger and sorrow. That was our past life. Everything that happened in the dream was my own personal, agonizing experience, so I will never forgive you, never. Hearing this, Ethan seemed to petrify. His thin frame trembled slightly, his eyes a dead void, like a candle in the wind about to be extinguished. No wonder you suddenly changed so much. So that's how it is, that's how it is. As Alara walked away, she could still hear Ethan's murmuring. That night, a scream came from the ward's house next door. 10 minutes later, an ambulance arrived. The sound of the ambulance siren and the cries of Ethan's parents intertwined. The next evening, Alara learned that Ethan had slit his wrists. He had locked himself in his room and before completely losing consciousness, kept saying, "I've come to atone for my sins. It turns out slitting your wrists hurts so much. She must have been in so much pain that day. She will never forgive me." Hearing this news, Alara couldn't tell what she was feeling. The clock on the wall ticked away, and there was no other sound. Just then, a message came from an unknown number. "Alara, I will not let anyone hurt you again, including myself." Alara stared at these words, a chill running down her spine. He was back. The 28-year-old Ethan was really here. The first thing he did when he came back was kill his 18-year-old self. He was crazy, can you forgive me? You psycho, everything had gone beyond Alara's expectations. Knock, 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 a sudden knock on the door. It was already very dark. Besides Alara and her younger brother, there was no one else at home. A thought inexplicably popped into her head. The person outside the door was the 28-year-old Ethan. Her younger brother was playing a game on his phone in the living room. Hearing the noise, he cursed under his breath and went to open the door. "Don't!" Alara rushed to stop him, but she had been in her room, too far from the door, and couldn't stop him in time. As soon as the door opened, a pungent smell of blood hit them. Ethan's face was pale, his wrist wrapped in a bandage that was soaked with blood. He exuded an aura of decaying despair. Her brother frowned. "It's you. What are you doing here?" Ethan ignored her brother, walked past him, his gaze fixed on Alara, long and full of longing, with a paranoia and madness that the 18-year-old Ethan didn't have. "I finally see you. I thought I would never see you again." His lost love was standing right in front of him, alive. It was like a dream God had woven for him. So, Ethan approached Alara step by step, each step heavy and difficult. He reached out his hand, carefully touching his beloved's face, wanting to feel the real warmth and touch. "It's not a dream, I'm really back." Alara slapped his hand away, her eyes cold. Her brother also came up at this time, pushing Ethan, trying to shove him out the door. Although Ethan had tormented himself into a skeletal state, her younger brother, a primary school student, couldn't move him at all. "Do you still love me? What do you think, Ethan?" Alara looked at the bloody bandage on his wrist and suddenly laughed. Alara Vance will never love Ethan Ward again. Ethan's pale face turned even whiter. He lowered his head, his body hunching over. The whole person seemed to have lost all vitality, like a skeleton buried underground for many years. Just being near him, one could feel a bone deep sorrow and helplessness. He suddenly stepped forward and hugged Alara tightly. Even though Alara kept hitting the wound on his wrist, he seemed to feel no pain. Alara heard Ethan's hoarse voice whisper to her, "This is the last time. I won't bother you anymore. I don't have much time left. The gods really didn't lie to me. I really brought you back to life." Alara stopped struggling. Fortunately, he didn't linger. After letting go of Alara, he let her brother push him out the door. The door closed, completely blocking Ethan's view. The final exams finally arrived. For the past few days, Ethan hadn't harassed Alara. Later, after the exams were over, everyone was immersed in the joy of finally being finished when a shocking piece of news suddenly broke. Ethan and Quinn had both missed the exams, having disappeared the day before. The police searched for 3 days and finally found them in an abandoned factory. At that time, Quinn was on the verge of death, her body covered in stab wounds, a bloody mess. The special police were on high alert, and the negotiators were also trying to persuade him. But Ethan ignored them all. He suddenly turned his head, smiled faintly at the television cameras, and without hesitation, plunged the knife into Quinn's heart. Quinn immediately stopped breathing. No, stop in that instant, Ethan was shot in the head. The knife fell to the ground with a clatter, and his body fell straight from the 18th floor to the ground. Many years later, Alara returned to the north, to the city that held so many of her memories. She once again passed by that temple. There weren't many people in the temple, just a few monks and a handful of tourists. She knelt before the Buddha statue again, kowtowing in prayer. "Patron, master." An old monk with white hair walked up in the temple hall. He held a string of prayer beads, his face benevolent, his old eyes seeming to see through all the cause and effect of the world. "Patron, you are a blessed person." "How can I be considered a blessed person?" Alara laughed, recalling the past. She felt that no matter what, she could not be considered lucky. The old monk slowly turned the prayer beads in his hand, shook his head, and sighed. The love of the human world is truly the most magnificent glimpse in the universe. Some are willing to die early to extend the life of the one they cherish. Some give up reincarnation to bring one person back to life. Amitabha, patron, your suffering has finally come to an end. Has her suffering come to an end? Unconsciously, Alara's face was covered in tears. At this moment, the bell in the temple rang, echoing through the green mountains and clear waters, reverberating in the long, quiet temple.